All right, hey, welcome everyone to the next edition, whatever this is, of the Liquid Weekly podcast. Got a special guest for you today, Harshdeep Hura King. Did I
Yeah,
ever say that right?
yeah, that's correct.
Oh no. Okay, that's correct. All right. Well, with someone with the name
Yeah,
Meisterheim, like I'm used to a world of being obliterated by pronunciation, so let me
Mr.
know.
Him. No.
Okay.
it's
And Taylor,
completely
of
fine.
course, is here too. Well,
Mhm.
Yeah,
tell us how
my,
you
my last
prefer it.
name is easy. It's Page. So the only thing that I usually get is people see Taylor Page and assume I'm a female. So they get surprised when a 6 foot tall, bearded dude walks into the room. So
I've been on many dates
no
like that.
pronunciation
Yeah.
issues though. So
So
what's up?
set the record straight, Harshdeep. How does say your whole name for us?
My full name's Harshdeep Singh Hura,
Harshdeep Singh Hura.
or
Okay.
a lot of people on the internet call me King because of my obsession with that username, which actually turned out to be my nickname that I used to sign in, like at the back of the notebooks when I was a child. So I was like, huh, that's fun. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to digging into your name and a lot more about you here in just a second. But as we start off each podcast, we kind of take a moment just to talk about what's going on in life and catching up. And so, Taylor, how are you doing, man? It's been a hot minute. I see that you run
Yeah.
triathlons. Thanks to your shirt,
Yeah,
letting us
it
know.
is.
Yeah.
It's you checked in, but that's what I figured, I'd get lucky potentially, and like you at least don't have the shirt.
No.
It might have been another blue shirt kind of type thing, but I at least did not match today. So yeah, did my sprint triathlon since the last time we had a chance to record. Didn't die, and so that was great. My biggest goal was just to finish. So and my stretch goal was to finish in under 2 hours, and I did that too, just barely. So
Dude, that's
so
awesome. Way
that
to go.
went
That's a
well.
huge.
Yeah, thanks. Originally my older brother was gonna run with me as well. He's I'm a bigger dude. He's about 50 some pounds lighter than me at least, and he's run half marathons and stuff. And so I was prepared to get smoked by him, but that was my whatever past a stretch goal would be. And but he didn't show up to this one because our original one got canceled, and he just didn't have a chance to reschedule. He lives in Pennsylvania and has a newborn, so it was hard to get in. So
Excuses.
I still beat him. Was my was my thing. So at least I did okay there. And but yeah, that was what's been going on big for me at least. And so kind of scaling down the running training, and just life in general. Today, get to take the kids. Our county fair is in town, so get
Oh,
to
fun.
bounce out, kind of play hooky this afternoon, and take the kids on some rides and go eat some food that's really really bad for you. So.
That's awesome. Well, while you were busy running marathons, the highlight of my recent past was new socks. I love getting new socks. They were on sale the other day for $5. I got a pair, and I hate
Do
them.
they have
They're
anything
terrible.
on them? Are they just plain white socks? And that was
They're
just your.
Adidas, just plain white
There
socks.
was. Oh, okay.
I'm kind of
Wow.
disappointed to be
That's.
honest, because like new sock day, like you get that comfort of the soft, cushy sock for like the first wear or
Mm.
two. It's like, oh, this is amazing. It's like walking on pillows, and
Now,
then they just downhill from there.
well, let me. Do you have an opinion on the type of socks? Because I have recently found merino wool socks. I don't know if I'm even saying that right or whatever. I got into sock research when I was running a lot more because your feet
Yeah.
get torn up, right? And but merino wool socks, I'm telling you, next level. So much better than cotton socks. I don't know what it
Is
is.
there a particular
I don't.
brand, or are you just looking for merino wools? Is the ingredient?
Yeah, just the whatever it's made out of or whatever. It just seems to be a hardier, more comfortable structure. It does better like for I sweat a ton, and so it's better at moisture wicking. Like than if nothing's worse than wet socks, right? Like whether
Right.
you're walking or running around or whatever. So they're really nice for that. So yeah, if you're next sock day, try to check them out. Maybe I'll send you some because they were pretty fantastic. Maybe I'll get you to be a
Gotcha.
believer.
No, I'm a believer. I just think they're expensive, so I'll have to keep an eye out because these suck.
They
Whatever
are.
socks these were, they were not worth the $30 they charged. But I only paid $5 for them, so good there. Good on me.
Yeah, get what you pay for. Yep.
That's right. Harshdeep, how about you? What asinine things been going on in your personal life that you want to share with our
Um,
audience?
just been building apps. Like that's pretty much
Oh,
about it.
listen to him. Yeah, he's so
Uh,
professional.
Absent
Well,
building a
like,
course.
yeah,
I know
like the
we won't
course
get into
thing.
that too much, but yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
like the course thing, building more apps. Like I'm one of those people who's taking a break from building Shopify apps for the agency I work at. by building apps for my own self. So, there's not much that's going on there. But apart from that, yeah, like there's a bunch of renovation happening. So I'm gonna get my own office finally in the house. And yeah,
Nice.
that's about it.
Dude, way to go. Yeah, well, I can't wait to dig
when
into
you're
that
building, yeah, when you're building for yourself, do you mean is this just like personal like productivity or apps you're planning to release or things to just
Um,
help you in your day to
it's
day?
mostly learning and creating snippets. So I have a habit of
Cool.
creating a bunch of screens and snippets and components so that
Hmm.
tomorrow, if I'm like, hey, can you do this? I'm just like, cool, copy paste, bunch of stuff, put it together,
Yeah, it's already done.
and push it out.
Hmm.
So,
Smart.
it's like long-term productivity.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So Taylor, you have a new section you want to introduce going forward called "What's
the
Going On in
community.
the Community." Yeah, in the community.
I-
So yeah,
Brr, brr, brr,
tell us
brr.
about this.
Where were your sound effects?
Oh, hold on. I'll get
Where's
there.
the sound effects board?
Uh,
There's like,
hold on.
Any moment now. Just hold
Right.
on.
Wait,
I have
stop.
to
Why
like
is
cut
it?
out the pod.
It's this software now. I'm blaming the software. It's still.
That's
I
all right.
mean,
This
can
is-
can we just pretend there was a sound and then post edit and you can just add it in?
Yeah,
for sure.
the worst co-host
So-
ever, Taylor. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I actually I was going to talk to you about this. I did actually get a board. I happened to get one or whatever, and so I was going to test it out. I just haven't hooked it up yet. So in the community, at least, though, some of the things just to like highlight real quick, things people might not have seen that we can link up in show notes later. So just talking about the real big transition in general, kind of Shopify, kind of community related. The help docs got a huge upgrade, which by the time we're talking about this, even when people hear about it, and looks like it was built on Remix with AI as the standard. So you've got that chat trying to help you out the whole time kind of type thing, and it's still a little finicky. I don't know if y'all have experienced that too much or trying to link up stuff even in search, but it's getting there and it feels good. It's relatively easy to navigate when it's consistently. So another item, this is the applause. So
Stop working.
I don't know if y'all saw this. This was really interesting. Got into a little bit of a convo on Twitter with themes partnering with app devs. So there's this feature now where basically they were kind of like promoting a specific app within a section of a theme that I thought was really interesting, and we'll link that up. Archetype Themes was doing that specifically. So kind of theme devs partnering with app devs to work, together kind of type thing. So I thought that was really unique and interesting. I haven't seen any like that before. And then all the way back in August, so this is a long time ago. I don't know if y'all caught that in the Shopify world. There was a whole big deal about the term back in stock with trademark strikes with apps. Yeah. And so there was this huge back and forth. It was going to impact a bunch of different apps. Basically, there was one of the apps, and this is probably something, Harshdeep, you've probably run into creating apps and things like that too, where you probably want to try to get your app name trademarked. That's probably like a good forethought, but some folks using that term back in stock, somehow it got approved, and so that was going to impact a bunch of different apps on the App Store. But Glenn and Toby came to the rescue, kind of put a stop to it. And it seems like it got figured out, or at least I didn't see anything else after that. And that was all the way back in August. So a couple of just real quick little tidbits about things I've picked up on in the community there.
When it comes to themes, like theme developers partnering with app developers, I have a lot of opinions.
Let's
Ooh.
hear 'em,
Merchants
Harshdeep.
actually like it.
Let's do it.
And-
Let's do it. Let's
and
get
see,
into it.
Here's the thing. Think about it as a theme developer, right? You can't turn it into a SaaS where people are paying you $10, $50, $100 a month. It's a one-time, say, $500 purchase. And not just that, you have to hand over your entire source code to them, right? That's the thing. And that's why theme piracy is a huge thing. And even though Shopify has taken some steps, it's not enough. Thomas Kelly, right? Yeah. Thomas Kelly and I, Thomas is ex Shopify, by the way. We actually had a conversation about this. And I did sign in the NDA, so I was like, hey, I can't talk about it. But keeping that conversation aside, even when he told me like, hey, this is where we are headed, amongst like, apart from like a bunch of other stuff, I was very excited because now it's like
Yeah.
theme developers have a new source of revenue. It's not
Yeah.
extremely irritating to the merchants. And I mean, we all just love things that I click on it, I install it, and it just works out of the box. So,
hmm
like, then the idea comes down to, hey, let's upgrade this section by installing a separate app. And if
hmm
that app works very well with my theme, that's actually a good thing. Because
Right.
from a developer's perspective, I get free marketing that other people can't because one theme developer is only going to be talking about one app in a specific area.
hmm
So I get monopoly there, apart from like all of the new marketing stuff. Second, I'm sharing this free revenue with the theme developer that I do not mind sharing because it's like, hey, you are literally the biggest theme developer in the entire Shopify ecosystem, and you're promoting my app for that, even as something as simple as free shipping bars. Like,
hmm
what more do I want? Right?
Yeah.
And from a merchant's perspective, or even as an agency's perspective, I'm like, okay, cool. If this app reduces my headache and is like one click install, and I know that it's very well supported, why not?
Yeah.
And I know a bunch of other people had a lot of opinions, especially developers. So
Right.
when I took a look at it,
Well,
I
and
was
and
like,
I think initially when I saw it, it looked to
mhm,
me because I only saw a snippet of this at first,
right.
and my initial reaction was like, theme devs are like creating apps and then promoting their own apps within their theme, which that kind of felt weird. But it's different when it's a partnership for some reason to me. Like that seems cool. But as opposed to,
This.
it's in a theme, but like, you can get this working better if you also install our app. It's like kind of like, getting upgrades or whatever kind of type thing. But from a partnership perspective, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's extremely difficult to break into the Shopify ecosystem as a theme developer.
Mm-hmm.
Like the baseline standards to build a theme is a lot. It's not a matter of throwing a bunch of liquid together, all customized down and call it a new theme. It actually takes a lot. So,
Yeah.
if that's opening up a new revenue for theme developers, it's opening up a new area for app developers to market their apps in. It's not intrusive. Merchants like it that, hey, one click install and it just works with this theme. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
assured of it. And if something goes wrong, I can just get hold of the app and the theme developers be like, guys, figure it out. Right? You promoted
Right.
me to use this app. So no one has an issue except for the people who are just like, hey, this is a very bad thing for merchants. I'm like, how is it a bad thing for the merchants?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
People love monopolies. We create our own monopolies ourselves. So
Sure.
a lot of people are just mad that, hey, why did I not think about it? Which is when I
Right.
see a
Yeah.
bunch of other developers gone. I'm just like, yeah, this has been the thing. I've talked about it ages ago to other theme developers, but no one wanted to take that risk. And when Thomas and I hopped on a call, and then he told me, I was so happy. I was like, I really want to talk about it, but I can't because you made me sign an NDA. But
Right.
now that this part is out, I was like so happy that someone's actually taking steps to open up new channels of marketing and revenue for both app and theme developers.
Mm-hmm.
And from my
So yeah.
perspective, two of the things it really goes after too are the abundance of apps in the App Store now. Like if you're a
Mm-hmm.
merchant and you need to solve a particular problem, it'd be great if the theme actually suggested here's the one or two or three apps that we think would be a perfect fit for this theme, versus having to
Mm-hmm.
wade through the App Store and look at the reviews and try to figure out is this actual truth or not. And the other thing is, I think we all see the value in vertical integration in different industries, whether it be something like
Mm-hmm.
SpaceX or Apple or whatever. There's just a beauty and synergy that comes and you can control the whole stack. That being said, I would hate to see this lead to a place of lesser freedom for app developers in terms of having the whole, world of themes and merchants available to you versus having it become siloed where they really recommend just one or two. But I don't know if it's going to go there, and I think there's a lot of good potential there yet. So it's interesting to hear your thoughts.
I mean, s- everything has its own pros and cons. I'm
Sure.
more, focused on the pros because if there's too many cons, Shopify is just gonna be like, hey, listen, so you wanna do this, we understand, but let's limit
Mm-hmm.
it to this. So guidelines are gonna kick in once it's a standard practice. So
Mm-hmm.
at this point of time, I feel like it just needs to become official that hey, theme developers can do this.
Yeah.
And so all of the other people who are mad about not thinking about it first can just be like, okay, now it's an official thing.
Yeah. Well, and you
So,
bring up a really great point with too, just finding other sources of revenue, for theme developers, because a lot of folks don't realize, merchants don't realize, and people going into it don't realize like they're paying for that. That's a lifetime like
yeah.
use, right? For that theme. They're getting lifetime upgrades, they're getting lifetime support. So, at what point someone who paid $175 for a theme that, we're now charging, closer to 400 because of all the updates and time and effort that's gone into it, but they're still supporting those $170 merchants years later, even though they're getting the newest stuff. So you understand at some
Supporting,
point, yeah,
you
is
know,
right. Well, and well, all themes are not created equal in that department, right? But I mean, that's just
no.
like any place else. Like support is a huge piece and component to it. But I think it is something that is helpful because it will continue to attract. I think that's a stopping point for a lot of other theme devs who look at like there's this big on ramp, to get on, and so that we have to get a lot of users for this to actually be profitable. If we're only doing it from this perspective, we have to find out another way to bring in other sources of revenue. So that's a really good point.
Even with the trademark thing, right? Like, my baseline idea is sure, I'll trademark a bunch of stuff, but I'll never act on it unless someone's trying to like really copy things. So
Mm-hmm.
if we build something out and we have trademarks on it, and I'm gonna add in the TM next to it, but if you're like, hey, you know what? I am building a completely new back in stock app, for example, like, sure, I love that competition, right? But like that forces both of us to be better. But acting on that trademark in a malicious intent that, hey, because I have that trademark, let's wipe out every other app on the App Store, it
Right.
doesn't sit right with me. I'm like, cool. Tomorrow when I want to sell that app or company, I have that in my IP. So
Mm-hmm.
that's more valuation for me. But anything after that is like, it feels very stupid. So even when this thing came
Yeah,
out, I was
agreed.
like, hey, Toby and Glenn, or anyone or Shopify leadership, if you throw back in stock the app out, like I'll donate $1,000 to charities. And so they were just like, yeah, okay, it's like cool. And I
Okay.
was like, all right.
Well, yeah. So something for
Yeah.
I agree. It's like it is ridiculous for something like a phrase like back in stock as opposed to so akin to that. And I don't know also what happened to that, but the owner for Cavallo had also
Yeah.
mentioned an issue as well that they had with an app doing the same thing, and that was a whole deal too. But in that instance, Cavallo's not used anywhere in common language at all. Like it's an
Yeah.
actual name. So something like that, 100% makes sense. Um, Definitely doesn't make sense from that standpoint.
Also, well, hey, I think we've beat those two topics to death, your new Go community section. And I'm wondering, looking at the timestamp already, I'm wondering if we just need to skip over our what we're working on this week and go straight into digging more into Harshdeep's stuff because I would hate to run out of time. What do you think, Taylor?
Yeah, that's
Unless you have
fine.
something really exciting you want to talk about.
I think we've got no. I think we've got lots of stuff to talk
Okay.
about. So
I was going to complain about this one thing, but I'll just save that for another episode. Cool.
save
Well,
the
let's go ahead
complaining.
and jump right into our main topic then, which is going to be talking more about Harshdeep and getting to know you a little bit better. And I don't know if you've watched, do you know what Marvel movies are, Harshdeep?
I do watch them regularly, yeah. Like that's the only
Okay, so
cinema that I watch right now.
Marvel movies, that's too bad.
Yeah.
So, like, okay. Um, well, a good superhero movie like these Marvel ones, they always start with an origin story. Batman
hmm
Begins or Iron Man 1 or whatever it might be. So, Harshdeep, if you were a Marvel movie, give us your origin story. How'd you get
Uh,
from nothing to who you are today in front of us?
like Iron Man has always been my favorite. This is before the Iron Man movies came out. In fact, the Audi R8 became my favorite car because of the Iron Man series, right? Uh, so yeah, like I started writing code in fourth grade. It was basic HTML. And then because of our curriculum, we were forced into C++ and SQL, but we would do it on paper and not on computers because we're talking like early 2000s here. And then that obsession kind of went on growing, like, okay, so I can build whatever I want, except it's on paper. And I think it was that scarcity of access to a computer that's what kind of kept it going. Because after sixth grade, I was in boarding school. So 7th through 12th, that's the entirety of my, like, the rest of the schooling time. Access to a computer was like for 2 hours a week. So in fact, in even in 11th grade, when I went on to create, like start building Wrap It Up, which was my iOS app, what Wrap It Up did was it algorithmically summarized text. So something that's very common with GPT today, I was just like, okay, how can I throw in a bunch of text and have it summarize it? Spent 2 years flowcharting the entire algorithms. And so like after I finished high school, I was like, okay, let's get a computer and let's build this into an app. So, yeah, like I think that was the point when I was like, okay, I built something out, I handed it to other people, and they were actually using it. I scaled it to 4.5 million users, got a TED talk because of it, got a bunch of articles, all of that stuff because of Wrap It Up. Sadly, I had to sunset it because GPT and people were expecting GPT level stuff. And I'm like, well, it's a free iOS app that does everything on device. So it's not really possible to kind of deploy that kind of stuff, right?
Sure.
So I was like, cool, it's time to sunset this and move on. So sunsetting was something very recent. But what eventually ended up happening was I joined college. It felt like a waste of time because I'm like, you're not pushing my brain enough.
Right.
One of the turning points, so I dropped out of college twice. The first time I was in a really great space. I had a terrible accident, had to miss out an entire trimester. And I was just like, yeah, cool. Like, I'm not paying so much for tuition again. So the third trimester, I picked up stuff like calligraphy and stuff. So
Nice.
it was more like, okay, I want to do these things. But now looking back, I think it was the whole idea of picking up what felt at that time unnecessary is what gave me some sort of a design sense today, right? I think my love for typography started there.
Oh, interesting.
And then the second time when I went to college, I dropped out the day when my marketing professor told me that billboard advertising is better than advertising on social media. And I'm like, it does not make sense. And so then I was like, okay, hey, if you're thinking about it this way, where you get Google Maps, you figure out places where there's a lot of traffic, so people are bound to see the billboards. Okay, understandable, but nothing more than that. Even to that, he was like, it does not make sense. People still, are gonna watch billboards, doesn't matter where they are. And so that day I was just like, you know what, I'm done. And I left. And then my parents were like, listen, you need to graduate. So they got me enrolled into this distance program. So I was just like, cool, I get to build whatever I want while like just studying enough to pass my exams. It was at that point of time that I was like, I need to make money, clearly.
Yeah,
And
it's good.
what better way to do, like the most optimal way to do that was to write code. And plus, because programming is all I knew, right? So I was just like, the iOS app isn't going anywhere because it's free. In fact, I pay $99 a year to kind of get that running.
Right.
So I was like, where else can I, like, the idea was how do I translate my efforts into something that equates to money and then charge people more because I made them more money. And e-commerce came in. And it was at that point of time someone introduced me to Shopify. And then they were like, "Oh, hey, Toby started by selling snowboards and stuff." And I was like, "Oh, cool, that's fun." And that super early on, it was fun to see like, hey, there's like these 200 new gaps in the Shopify ecosystem that you could like fill in with apps. Then the idea became, I do not
So,
want to do my own public apps.
what year was this?
I honestly don't remember. I think it was like 6, 7 years ago.
Okay. So the App Store was still
Uh,
pretty early. There wasn't
yeah.
a ton of stuff going on. Okay.
So what we figured out was instead of launching our own apps, because I was terrible at marketing at that point, I was like, why not tell people that, hey, if I can write an algorithm to summarize text on device, I can build you a Shopify app. So that's where I started out with the whole thing of I'm never going to push out a public app. In fact, the only thing I'm going to do is work with other people to push their apps out because I just wanted to, lock myself up in a room and put my head down and write code. So that's pretty much the origin story of, like me going from like, hey, what do I do with my life to be like, okay, we are doing Shopify apps and open source and courses and all of these things. Yeah.
Well, it involved fewer evil villains and explosions and car chases than most origin stories that we hear about in Marvel movies, but that's pretty cool. So I still can't get over the whole you wrote code on paper to learn it kind of thing. So what did you
Yeah,
do? Like
like,
handwrite C++ and turn it to the professor and he would visually check it for syntax errors?
oh no, so they would then type it out and then report back to me like, hey, you had an error there, so I fixed like some basic stuff here,
Goodness.
but there is a logical error here. So, in fact, for my final exams for the computer science subject, we had to write SQL queries on paper. No computers there.
Which, on some level, that sounds kind of cool. I think it forces you to think much more deeply than looking at Stack Overflow, copy pasting, see if it works, right? But
Yeah,
talk about a slow feedback loop. Way to go. I'm sure that really has dividends in the way you think about programming now, though. That's cool.
it
I don't think I
does.
can write code on paper at all.
Yeah.
Now, like one of the reasons why I still recommend this to almost all junior and mid-level developers is it forces you to think and understand how to run your code before you hit enter.
Yeah.
Uh, in fact, I don't remember where I read this or if someone told me, like, writing code is a direct reflection of how you think, right? Because
Uh-oh.
it's like, hey, I have a problem, so this is how I think it should be solved, right? We're not talking about
Uh-oh.
syntax errors, but like, if you have logical errors in your code, it's a reflection of there is a bug in the way you think, and that is the
I've been,
fundamental basis of your entire existence. So it's
see,
like,
Taylor, I told
yeah,
you
I
you
know.
have problems. All
I
your
definitely have
bugs.
problems.
Signs of a deeper issue. Interesting.
Yeah, so that's very scary. And when I tell this to junior and mid developers, they're just like, huh, we never thought about it that way. And then they go on to mostly ignore everything that I've said, but a few of them who actually took me seriously, they're doing really well. So I'm just like, okay, I'm not just the only one who is benefiting off of this specific advice.
Gotcha. One other question I had about your origin story, real quick, and then maybe I'll let Taylor talk for once, is maybe people already know this, but where approximately are you located in the globe? Just for
I'm in
those that don't
India
know.
right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in India right now, and I'm moving to Canada in April 24. So yeah.
Oh, well, you're practically right next door to us. What part of Canada?
I have my touchdown in Mississauga, but
Okay.
I do plan on staying around the Toronto area purely because of the e-commerce peeps are there. So I'm just like, as
Nice.
long as I'm within 1, maybe 2 hours of Toronto, like I think I'm good to go.
Gonna make a pilgrimage to the Shopify home base?
Of course.
Of course, that's right.
How can you miss that?
Well, you're basically just a lake away from Taylor and I, 'cause we're both in Ohio.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great.
Which is right south of Toronto, essentially. So that's cool.
Hmm.
Taylor, you got any questions you want to follow up on?
I have lots of my own questions. I mean,
Yeah,
I'll be 100% honest. I was a little distracted just now. So if y'all
sure,
have
no worries. I'll jump in the next
seen
one
that or
then.
whatever, I had a what? No, I've got plenty of questions. I had a merchant that the dreaded like we just launched something yesterday after changing stuff that we've been planning on, and now people can't check out. So like,
Ooh, yeah, the
so I
dreaded.
was just
Yeah,
doing some stuff there, so I apologize for being a little distracted there. Of course, it's going to happen at some point during a recording, but I am super excited to be engaged now because I just did a couple of pushes and I think I'm okay. But what
yeah.
as far as what y'all are talking about, I've got lots of questions. We're locked and loaded when it comes to app dev and all sorts of things. So I know we talked a little bit about origin story and backstory, and then also, obviously you being pretty close in Canada. But did you have any pressing questions, Carl? Because I'm ready to start
No, I just
digging
feel like I
in,
was
asking the
dominating the interview,
questions.
and you're used to talking, so I thought I'd let him come up for air. But you were
Well,
busy saving the day.
I'd say it's because I would say it's because like I'm getting better at letting other people talk, but it's literally because I was distracted, unfortunately. So
Sure,
there's
no
not a lot of
worries.
emergencies in e-commerce, except for like, oh
Well, I
no.
think we've all been there, right? We make that little theme edit, and we walk away not realizing that we just broke checkout for merchant. We don't find out for 2 days, and like, what about those lost sales? Ooh,
Yeah,
sorry.
well, we had it all
Yeah.
working, and then changes were made last night by the merchant, and I was like, no, what? Why would you do that to me?
Now,
So
see,
push.
Harshdeep, if he had just done your methodology and written this out on paper, he would have thought about this more deeply, realized that he
If
doesn't know how
only.
to think, and it would have been fine. So,
So what I do with my merchants is I'm just like, you want to make even like some text changes, duplicate the theme, do it there, test it out, and then publish it. Because there have been times where I'm like, huh, there's no one on the site right now. There's like, you have the live counter open on the side, and I would break something on purpose, and I'm like, see, I told you, now people can't check out. Now imagine if someone was trying to check out.
Right.
So, giving that shock late in the night to almost all my merchants. And then they're like, oh, no, like, even if it's a tiny text change or moving sections around, I'm going to push it to a different theme, test it there, and then publish.
Right. Yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
that's usually the flow that we go through here. But this is just I'm not sure why. So they're
Mistakes
usually
were
really good
made.
about this stuff. So mistakes were made. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm locked and loaded with questions. First and foremost, obviously dev related, tech related. We talked about backstories, a couple of other things. I really want us to talk at some point because I feel like some of these questions are probably going to be covered in your course. So I know we're going to talk about that at some point. But I think the biggest issue for me as a theme dev,
Mhm.
just getting up and off the ground and running, trying to start to move into app dev on Shopify is working with the CLI. In particular, Shopify's documentation supports or recommends like Cloudflare tunnels, right?
Mhm.
I banged my head against the wall so much over trying to get this up and running. And so eventually I went over to ngrok, just bit the bullet, paying $50 a month or whatever it is kind of type thing, just to
50
kind
bucks a
of like
month?
test
What
things
plan are
out or
you on?
whatever this is. I'm probably not on the right one because I don't know at some point, like again, what I'm doing well enough to where I could at least get just two custom domains or whatever set up. I don't even know. So that's obviously Carl's already like, Taylor, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So as far as like the CLI, there's also this weird issue that I have, or maybe not that I have, but maybe it is just a quirk, just with dynamic ports. So like when you're a theme dev, you're not thinking about, okay, like I'm having to run like a local server for the front end and for the back end to get everything up and running, right? It's just like, man, I just Shopify theme dev and my store handle and I'm ready to rock, right? That's just it. That's all I have to do. And so, now this idea between, well, I have to worry about these like dynamic ports and like update this stuff or whatever. So even just getting up and off the ground for a theme dev trying to get into apps, it feels like a really steep incline. So I don't know if you have tips and tricks in general, just general advice for like how you get things up and running. I'm assuming this is covered in the course, so I do want to talk about the course. But obviously, if you're here, I want to get my question answered so I can stop feeling really dumb every time I try to spin up something to hack away on it or whatever. So yeah, that's my ridiculously long question with backstory.
So I have a very weird love and hate relationship with the CLI itself
Yeah.
because I do not use it at all. So unless I'm not building
Okay.
extensions, I'm just like, yeah, we're not even touching the CLI. So
Wow.
whether it's creating an app in the partner dashboard or scaffolding the boilerplate, I'm just like, I'm using my own stuff. For
Okay.
me, the idea has been, sure, Shopify acquired Remix and now they're like, hey, we should use Remix everywhere. Good for you. But
Good for you.
yeah, I mean, like the end goal is I want to use the right tool for the job, right? And
Yeah.
more importantly, I want to use something that I'm comfortable in.
Yeah.
So
100%.
there are a bunch of apps that you'll use Express with. There's a bunch of apps that rather use Remix or Next.js with. And then there's always the question of, hey, what framework is better? And my
Rails.
go-to answer is I'm like, whatever stack you know, Ruby is sometimes a pain to work with, trust me. But the answer to like what stack is superior is the one that you are actually comfortable with. Because
Sure.
think about this, I'm using Next.js right now because now Shopify is like, hey, use Express. The official boilerplate is Express. I'm like, cool, Next.js to Express. What is my actual output in terms of what changes have I made to the merchant side? Zero, right? I've
Mm-hmm.
just
Right.
re-engineered my entire thing. And now Shopify is like, oh no, scratch that. We acquired a new framework, use this. And I move on to that. So it's not only the time penalty that I'm taking, but I'm also now have to unlearn and relearn the entire thing while my net output stays zero. So for me, the idea is sure, Shopify is pushing a bunch of remix stuff. Learn remix, know enough that you can see what's happening there and translate it into your frameworks, right? So Shopify is like, hey, you should use Cloudflare returns. I'm like, I'm very happy with ngrok. They're like, use remix. I'm like, thanks, but I'm going to use whatever I'm comfortable with,
Yeah.
right? So when you're moving from theme dev to app dev, for me, the idea is first find out what your stack is. For a second, forget whatever Shopify recommends. Do you want to go the JavaScript route? Do you want to go the Ruby route? Do you want to go the PHP route? Or do you want to go the Golang with something else route or the Rust route, whatever it is? And then see if there's like packages available for that. Like on PHP Node and Ruby, you have the official gems and packages available, right? Read the docs, mess around with it, and then be like, okay, how can I use this in my favorite framework? Right?
Okay. So the big story is use what you're comfortable with, or figure out kind of like what's the path of least resistance here. Like there's a recommended way to do it for everybody, but like, hey, if it's easier to use this or whatever. So, and you reference using your own stuff. I mean, other than to do a couple of things or what have you, because you've created a bunch of like different open source tools. Is that what you're referencing?
Right. Correct.
Okay. Awesome.
So even with the open source stuff, right? Before any major update goes up, I find someone who's using that stack and be like, hey, listen, you know what? I'm willing to give you like 100 hours this month. I want you to build with the stack that you're already using, but I know you want to use your own folder structure or have your own bunch of issues. Why don't you use this stack? In return, you get about 100 hours a month from me at no cost, but I need your like access to all of your engineering tools so I can then collect feedback, build a better boilerplate, and then open source it. So both the boilerplates that are up have actually been tested by multiple engineers before they even get an update. So if it's something minor like a package update, that's a different story. But if I'm reworking auth, or recently we moved from app-based React to app-based CDN, I had 4 people push out apps, waited for an entire month to collect all of the feedback, and then open sourced it. So it's just like a lot of people say that the ROI on doing open source stuff is extremely negative. But the reason why I'm sitting here and the reason why you know me is because of the open source stuff.
Yeah.
I get approached by like the job that I have today is because of my open source stuff, or a bunch of other agencies and people who get in touch with me, even merchants sometimes. They're like, hey, we see that you're doing great with your boilerplates. Can you build us this app? And they're willing to pay that premium because now they have a lot of assurance that I know what I'm doing. And more than my resume, they look at my Twitter because they're like, on your resume, you can talk about things once, but on your Twitter,
Right.
talking each and every single day about app development and interacting with other people on this, that is a very clear indication that you know what you're doing, right? Even if you're average at it, you know what you're doing, and this is something that you actually want to do. So it makes more sense. Uh, So yeah, I mean, it's not just about using my own boilerplate stuff. If you do not have any experience with Next.js, for example, and you're like, hey, I'm new to the JS ecosystem, learn Remix and do it the official way.
Sure.
But if you're like, you know what, I don't like Remix, I prefer Next.js, or I prefer Solid, or I prefer Quick, do that. But
Right.
be dangerous enough with the official stuff that you can read stuff off of there and port it over to your favorite framework. And then, because you're like, hey, I'm anyways doing it, might as well open source that library and build, a space for yourself on the internet that, hey, even if there's like 10 other engineers using it, they like all 11 of you are now working together to kind of build on it. So now
Yeah.
it's not just you building on it alone and running into issues and breaking your head over it. It's the collective of everyone who's using it, who's opening issues and telling you like, hey, this is what's happening. So, again, like if you're looking into how do I start into open source, this is how you get into open source too. But yeah, like I have a systematic problem or issue with platforms pushing up proprietary frameworks. Like, sure, Remix is open source, but then if you look deeper, Remix relies on ES Build. My issue
Mm-hmm.
with ES Build is it's a one-man project. Evan, right? Who's the one building ES Build, Vite, Vue. I don't know about the other projects, but ES Build, if you were to take a look at the contribution chart, you're going to see like 95% of contributions are actually done by Evan. So tomorrow,
Okay.
God forbid something happens to him, what happens to
Mm-hmm.
ES Build now? Right? Like, what
Right.
fork are you using? What companies are going to be willing to fork and actually open source and invest in it? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually looking at projects where it's just like, okay, it needs to have enough support for me to be able to using it. And besides, I don't think, again, personal opinion, I don't think Shopify should be promoting Remix. Shopify's job should be let's make API libraries and examples and let
Mm-hmm.
people decide what stacks are they going to use. Because
Right.
if you open up the Shopify Discord, head into app dev, a question I read like 2, 3 nights ago was, hey, I've been using the Remix stuff. I have never used Remix. How do I make a GraphQL call to Shopify?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are you supposed to rely on these developers who don't understand how to make a call to build high availability and critical e-commerce apps?
Mm-hmm.
Because one tiny mistake and there's lost revenue.
Right.
So you can't be a junior developer and expect to build like insane stuff
Right.
and push it out in the public. You need to have at least like 6 months of building e-commerce apps under your belt before you can actually take the app store head on because it's not an easy place to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk
So
about
yeah.
that a little bit, if you don't mind pivoting from Remix. I had
Yeah.
two questions kind of around that. Is you said it's hard to survive in the App Store. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what do you mean in terms of how people can prepare themselves for that? What should they be looking out for?
One is understand your fundamentals first, especially if you're coming from your engineering backgrounds, right? Because if you never learned basic DOM manipulation in JavaScript and then you directly hop down to learning Next or Remix, and you have zero idea how caching works when you're fetching stuff or how to deploy to a specific server, like you're not gonna make it. The sad thing is most newer developers who are hopping on have zero experience building apps in the first place. And again, my data on this comes from the amount of questions I get in my repositories. If you open up the issues on the Express one, which is more beginner friendly because, Moonstack, you're going to see people being like, hey, I cannot access my MongoDB from my React side of things. Like, do I really have to sit down and explain to you, like, you should not be accessing MongoDB or any database from React side of things, and it should be done server side? And, like, whatever discounting app that you're building is probably going to fail. It's because of that kind of stuff is why surviving on the App Store is difficult because I know a bunch of mid and senior level developers who, spend 6 months actually getting good with Shopify and then pushing an app out. They're doing great. Like in 6 months, they're doing like four, five, $6,000 MRR, right? So the App Store isn't that difficult, so to speak. But the whole idea of getting into building e-commerce apps, which are high availability and critical apps, is difficult for the mind of a junior and early mid-level developers. Because here you're talking to me about scalability. Like when I tell people, I'm like, you have a Next.js app, throw it in Vercel, right? A database on PlanetScale, put it behind a Cloudflare instance, and you're good to go. A junior developer comes up to me and tells me, like, but Vercel's too expensive. And I'm like, cool, let's run a bunch of calculations. In order to make $10,000 a month off of your app, whatever it is that you're building, you need to get 1,000 people on a $10 a month plan. So are you telling me that Vercel cannot handle 1,000 merchants a month, right? I understand if you're doing plus apps where webhook data is a lot, like it's really a lot, get that over to AWS's Event Bridge or Google PubSub, whatever you're comfortable with. But you can't just be coming in with someone else's opinion and then be like, oh, this is my opinion now. Like do the basic math. Besides, most of these people have never even crossed the free plan of whatever they are building on, and they're worried about scalability. Because think about this. If today I use JavaScript, I don't even like to build on TypeScript unless I'm forced to, right? I'll use JavaScript and JS talks because I don't like that build time. I push something out and I'm at 10,000 MRR, and now I see like, okay, hey, there's a bunch of stuff that I need to spin out into a more serious language, right? Maybe Golang or Rust. And I'm making $10,000 a month. How difficult is it going to be for me to learn basic Golang on the side, hire a good Golang developer, pay them $10,000, $15,000, right? And have them build that service out. So you're thinking more like an engineer and less like an entrepreneur, because the whole mindset here is let's not over engineer unless that brings me enough revenue. So it's the same with porting over to Remix. Moving over to Next.js to Remix is how much revenue is that going to bring me? Because that's what I'm building my apps for, right? I found a hole in, a customer's workflow, and I built an app, and I'm only targeting 1,000 people, right? A thousand people who pay me $10 a month, that equates to $10,000 a month. It's a pretty straightforward thing. So when I move from Next.js to Remix, how close is, that switch getting me to that $10,000 a month? So
Fair.
now all of a sudden your perspective on the App Store has shifted, and you're just like, well, everyone thinks it's extremely difficult to survive, but then 1,000 merchants paying $10 a month doesn't seem as bad, right? So a lot of times it's about perspective, because this again happened with the Build for Shopify thing. You see on Twitter everyone posting, hey, we got the BFS tag, right? And they're posting screenshots. And you would expect like some 20,000 apps have BFS tag. When the collection came out, there's only 68 apps, right? Next.js today says that, hey, you should be using the app router. In fact, even in the CLI, they're like, you know what? Use the app router. It's the recommended one. Lee Robinson, who's the DevRel guy from Vercel, posted a graph. As of August 23, this is based off of Next.js's V13 adoption of top 1 million sites. 79,000 of them are using Pages, and not even 6,000 are using the app router. So you go on Twitter and you see everyone using the app router, and then you're like, but the reality is something very different. So it really depends on where you're looking, to be honest with you.
Sure.
Which is why I'm like, if you have an opinion, make sure that you formed it yourself. So when people ask me, like, are you switching over to the app router? I'm like, no, Pages router works perfectly fine. And there is no incentive just yet to actually move away and learn a completely new paradigm. You can go incrementally with some stuff, but for most parts, I'd rather not. So
I think
yeah, like App Store isn't that difficult. What's difficult is managing opinions and uh, expectations.
that's your key thought right there. You shared so much good stuff in there, but that whole idea of like make sure your opinions are your own, that you actually think through the bottom line. Because you're right, the space that we're in, Twitter, Shopify Slacks, even Liquid Weekly to some extent, right? It can be an echo chamber, and it's so easy to get caught up on what everyone
Right.
else is thinking about, what everyone else is doing. But I think you bring a really good perspective, Harshdeep, where if you're in this for the money, which I would say all of us love technology, and that's partly why we're doing it, but we're also pragmatic. We have families, we need to make revenue, right? We're in it for the money. It's definitely a filter you need to be having, and it can save you a lot of grief. Now,
Right.
for me, the concern is kind of going back to the shift in technology frameworks, the shift in recommended approaches from Shopify, whatever. I'm with you, man. I don't do things just because people think they're cool, but my concern is you have to keep up to some extent because the technical
Right.
debt, you begin to fall behind. Shopify moves on, and then you're just in a world of hurt. So, how do you balance that pragmatism and the ROI calculation with also the reality of keeping up with where Shopify is going?
Well, one thing is most of my weekends are something that I spend kind of learning new things, like because I can do that right now. Eventually, when I have a family and I have to spend time with them, because obviously family, I can't really keep up, and that's when the whole idea of let's not think like an engineer, but as an entrepreneur comes in. If I'm making enough money off of my apps that are out there, so like two apps that do 1,000 merchants at $10 a month. That's $20,000. I'm sure I can, throw $5,000 on a consultation to like a bunch of senior developers and be like, show me the difference between Next.js and Remix, right? You have 2 hours. Let's sit down with this next month. Here's $2,000. You know, help me understand what's happening. So it's going to sound very weird, but you can literally throw money at this problem. But then
Sure.
your entire mindset needs to shift from, being an engineer to being an entrepreneur. Like recently, I was talking to someone who's building a bunch of Shopify functions and doing checkout stuff. And they're like, Harshdeep, so, I've rewritten my TypeScript stuff for the function to Rust, and now I can handle like 200 cart line items. And I'm like, when was the last time you actually heard or you have seen a cart with 200 line items? Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, the best I have seen on a non B2B store is about 15. So I'm going to push that limit to 30, maybe 35, and I'm happy with it. Right? And if we hit that limit, I'm going to see the use case and I'm probably going to spin up a different function and then worry about it later. Probably charge them more. Be like, hey, $5 more because you want that extra B2B stuff. But from day one, you've set yourself up for failure. Why? Because you support 100 out of the box. Right? And no one's going to pay you more money while I am not worried about engineering to that extent. A lot of it is bad code, and my code runs 10 milliseconds slower. Boo hoo. I lost so much revenue from that. Like, what's the idea there? So it's more about keeping that balance of, does optimizing this specific part equate to either more revenue or more simplification in the longer term? Obviously, you want to avoid tech debt, but you can only minimize it and you can never avoid it.
Sure.
And that's been true forever. So when the time comes of Shopify's like, screw JavaScript, everyone move over to Rust, and you already have an app out there, and that's your full-time business. I'm sure you can pull back on a bunch of luxuries for like 2, 3 months while you hire a bunch of Rust developers and, learn Rust and migrate over there. And besides, that change isn't going to happen overnight, because the great thing is Remix uses the same JS library that was used by Express, and that's used by almost every other JS-based Shopify app. So I'm not too worried about it that front.
Sure.
Maybe it could require some modifications to runtimes and a bunch of other stuff, but as long as you know your framework and as long as you know enough of Remix, you can port things over and be fine with it. Like, it's an extra step, but by no means it's a threat. It's an inconvenience.
I want to make sure we have time to talk about your course today too. Did you want to chat some about that, or is it too early?
Yeah, I mean, like, sounds like a good time. So,
I mean, too
the
early in
idea
your
for,
process. You ready? You ready to share news about it though, right?
yeah. So,
Okay.
and I'll tell you the disaster that happened too.
Sure.
So, for me, like almost a year ago, I was just like, I want to do a course, right? And the idea wasn't just to like have this always updated live service like space where whatever new comes up on Shopify, and see, now you're gonna understand what I mean by balancing the entire thing out, right? And a lot of people are gonna hate me mostly for this. Uh, I was like, cool. So whatever new comes in Shopify, I want to be able to build like my own knowledge base around it, but also share it. But then doing it over YouTube or whatever it is becomes like a chore. I'm just like, why share it? Like, it's a business edge to me and the place I work at. I'm like, how do I monetize this? Right? Because I'm anyway spending a lot of time learning the new stuff. I'm like, cool, if we spin it into a course, people actually pay me to learn the new stuff. And now what's happening is only people who are serious about it will actually be able to do something with it. So what's
Sure.
going to happen is not only do I educate other people on this, but other people also come back and tell me, hey, by the way, this error that you were having, this is the fix,
Oh,
right? So what ends up happening is, again, there's the same with boilerplates, right? I open source my boilerplate so that 10 other engineers can tell me what I'm doing wrong. And then all 11 of us benefit off of it. The same idea is with the course. One of the reasons why the course is never going on a discount again is because I want people to be serious about it. I can spin up a Udemy course, sell it for like 10-20 bucks, and probably get like 10-15,000 students and be very happy with it that, hey, it's a huge thing. But by putting up a barrier on it, like, hey, you're paying like 250 bucks, but it's one time, so it's not that big of a deal.
Sure.
And now you're getting access to a live service that's always updated. More importantly, the Discord isn't an echo chamber. The other people that are in there are just as serious as you are. There are agencies, there is a bunch of Shopify people, there's a bunch of other regular people that are like, hey, I want to get into this, right? And then all of us are now interacting with each other, talking about our own apps and building our own community of extremely serious people. So in my head, I'm not charging you for the course, I'm charging you for the community, right? And I feel like if I position it exactly that way, once we have enough people, like I'm sure a bunch of people would immediately hop on, but I am flying a little under the radar because I happen to have a disaster. So I've been doing this for almost 8 months, working with a
Oh
bunch
boy.
of editors, right? And we're like, I'm recording, sending them stuff. I'm like, okay, I need an animation here. I want to show how a request goes via middlewares, what checks are we running, and then do this. It's all going great. 4 days before the launch, I'm like, guys, you need to start uploading the videos onto like a Dropbox. And so then I'll just set up the entire Gumroad, which is where all of the content is. No response. I'm like, okay, cool. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, right? The next day, I'm like, guys, where are the videos? No response. I realized that they have disappeared.
Oh no.
Is
So over 8 months, all of the videos that I shot, which is almost 100 hours of content, is now lost.
Oh.
The most irritating thing is I sent over all of the raw footage, all of this, like I have all of my scripts, so I'm not really like too worried about it. But I'm like, I lost all of those animations and content and stuff,
Yeah.
right? And so I was panicking like a day before the launch, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I have nothing to show.
Oh
So
no.
then I post on my Discord, I'm like, okay, guys, so this happened, but here is what we're gonna do instead. Like I can sit here and cry about it, but I'm gonna be transparent. Here's what happened, but let's not, spend too much time on that. I'm gonna record on the weekends and I'm gonna edit a video every day and upload it through the weekdays
Oof.
so that every single day you have some of the other content up. And then I posted the entire like flow of, hey, these are the chapters, this is what's happening. And so now we are following the idea of Friday, Saturday, Sunday is when I record, and Monday to Thursday is when I upload one video every day. Uh, that is almost going on schedule because I missed one day because it was my parents' anniversary, and I was like, okay, I really
Ah.
need to go out.
I want a
And
refund.
we were updating. And we were doing the average CDN things. So I was just like, cool, I need to record a video on this and explain that, hey, we're moved from React to CDN now, and these are the changes. Uh, but yeah, like I already have it scheduled out. Editing videos is luckily not that difficult now that, I have a proper flow for it. But the whole idea of the course is to treat it like a live service, where it's like a new editions is coming in. They just announced, say, for example, Shopify editions and checkout stuff. In a week or two, I want to explore a bunch of stuff and push out, hey, this is how you explore it, right? Like,
Mhm.
uh, even when it comes to talking about Polaris, one of the reasons why I love to talk about Polaris is it's actually, in my opinion, the best component UI library that's out there because
High
I do
praise.
not have to innovate. Because, like, think about this when you're building apps, almost every engineer or every app developer that I talk to is like, oh, but it's so limiting and I can't do this and I want to have a custom button and I can't use Tailwind. I'm like, you're doing this all wrong. The whole idea of you forced to use Polaris is to build apps in the admin UI that feel like, here is how
Feels
I feel
native.
about it. Yeah, not built for Shopify, but build those components like it was built by Shopify.
Mhm.
What ends up happening is my favorite one is when you configure discounts. So head into admin, discounts, create a new discount in the configuration page there. Think about this. If you're making a configurator for your own app, the merchant already is very familiar with that pattern, right? You're not going to have a new support request. You do not have to create a new video educating them on how to use it. Copy, paste, modify it a little, call it a day. Why do you have to go through the whole process of working with a designer, thinking about something new, and then pushing it in? Like, my brain does not compute any of that. I'm just like, oh, you don't have a component? Go back to the admin UI, see what's happening, push it out. Like, one thing from here, one thing from there, put it together, see if it works properly, throw it out there. And people are going to tell you like what works and what doesn't. So, it's stuff like this that I go over the course. I'm like, this is going to sound like an anti-pattern, but this is what the reality is. And I spend like half an hour talking about this. I'm like, hey, this is the actual thing. Where it's like, why you don't innovate when it comes to Polaris. Sure, you can add in a bunch of imagery and illustrations to give it some sort of personality, for the lack of a better term, but that's to the extent of it. And the great thing that's happening is everyone's just like, Harshdeep, you don't do public apps. So obviously you don't really care about any of this stuff. With the agency, we're going to be pushing out a public app before the end of this year. So there's going to be a bunch of internal tests with our own merchants. And then we're going to be like, okay, hey, let's make it a public app. I'm going to stick it to everyone's face that, hey, I adhered to every single Polaris component. There is like, throughout the entire thing, it's almost finished. A bunch of polishing work needs to go in. I haven't used a single line of custom CSS. It's all basic Polaris, right? And then I can stick it to everyone's faces. I'm just like, when I tell you to stop innovating, I'm serious about it because that's how exactly I build.
Don't cross Harshdeep, man. Say that.
I'm going to build an entire app this way just to prove you wrong.
That's right. All right.
Like, again,
well, I did want to make sure we had asked people going into this episode if they had any questions to post on Twitter. We actually had one guy, Patrick, that asked a really good question. So I want to make sure we cover it, and then we should probably wrap up and get on to the picks of the week. But Patrick asked, if you had to list out all the non-development skills someone would need to launch a Shopify app and actually get users, what would they be? And your answer could just be, Patrick, just get in the course and I'll tell it all to you there because it's such a long answer. But maybe you have a quicker answer that you could just give away for those that have made it to the hour
of the episode talking about some non-development skills.
Summarize it maybe real quick.
But yeah, it's like the quick one-liner.
I think it would come down to two things. One is something that I already talked about. Stop thinking like an engineer and start thinking like an entrepreneur. Like, figure out where you want to spend time optimizing what processes. Right? Like, optimistic UI loading and loading states, yes, please spend some time there. But ensuring that your app can load 10 milliseconds faster, it's literally not going to have any sort of impact on your revenue.
Sure.
Right? So, even as much as we love to kind of obsess over these details, you and I both know it's not going to matter. Right? A rewrite isn't warranted there. The second thing is understand things take time. When I'm building out an app, and there have been times where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to build an app out for myself. I've given myself a timeline of 24 months before I publish the app. In those 24 months, I'm working with merchants to see what the actual problem is. I am building those, hey, these are the top 25 productivity apps in the App Store blogs for those SEO content ranking. And so that I'm like, okay, once I have that authority and I'm on the first page, I'm going to swap everything out and push all of my apps over there, right? I'm also going to see like what are people searching for, what are people clicking on, so I can build my next app based on what people are actually searching for. This kind of data is something that you can't even buy. Like, I don't even know where you can buy this kind of data, right? So again, the idea comes down to, don't think about catering to 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 merchants. 1,000 merchants at $10 a month, and you're good to go.
That's great advice.
So it's not that difficult to do this once you like stop getting out of your own way.
It's kind of picking and choosing the things that you need to focus on, which I think from your perspective, it's stop getting hung up on the little details that don't matter. Figure out what's important and then focus on that.
Yeah, do
Patrick,
things that make you
a millionaire. Remember this episode, Patrick. This is where it all began for you. Let's go. Thanks for that advice, Harshdeep. Well, I think
Always.
we're going to transition now to our picks of the week. This is the time of the show. I mean, there's so much more we could talk about. It's a bummer to have to do this, but people fall asleep fast, so as Harshdeep knows, right? They don't want a 3-hour episode. They just want 20 minutes.
Well, and that's what we bring everybody on with the notion of like we're bringing you on one time, but that means you have to say yes to coming on a second time at least. So
That's right.
like,
We just get warmed up with
we
you.
we can pick your brain a little bit more and have some more opportunities here to hear a little bit more.
Yeah, the next time instead of going like general, let's go on specific things.
Yeah.
I think that would be more impactful that way too. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so pick of the week is when we have a time to share something cool that's come across our desk. It could be programming, it could be not. And we'll start with Taylor just to give Harshdeep a moment to collect himself. Taylor, what's your pick of the week this week?
Well, my
everybody knows.
pick of the week this week has been featured in Liquid Weekly already. But
Must be
I
great.
will go ahead and throw it out. The mock.shop. So it's where you can kind of play around, test out the storefront API, and for people like me who, when you're trying to mess around with GraphQL, and I was running into this issue. I can't remember if we talked about this last time, but with checkout extensions, and I was just like getting just so close to the right place where my GraphQL query was working properly until I wanted to like add price, and everything was breaking. And so I had gone the route of setting up, I think it's Insomnia is what Shopify's got this whole little repo with some starter stuff. So that way you can just test it out. So people also can use like Postman or whatever kind of type thing. But so I was, going back and forth. It took me all this time to get this set up or whatever, versus I could have just dropped into mock.shop and done this like super quickly. And so anyways, so that is a really great place for you to like test out queries and get it back very quickly in a way that's not going to hurt your brain. And so my problem ultimately was I was just using the wrong API and I hadn't enabled the storefront API for what I wanted to use anyways. But this would have got me there so much faster. Sometimes it's good to, work really hard on something, kind of bang your head against it for a little while so that way it sticks a little bit better. But the cool thing is, I thought at least in here, in addition to the code examples that they do have for GraphQL queries, they have them already fashioned for if you want to just like run straight like fetch request, or when you are using Remix, or something like that, or if you're just running curl or something. It's really handy just to have it just right there ready for you to rock, and you can see the output to figure out what exactly it is you're doing wrong. So mock.shop, very handy, especially if you're a front-end dev getting into checkout extensions and stuff here. Very, very handy for that.
Awesome. Mock.shop. Check it out. All right. Harshdeep, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I'm going to one up Taylor on this. So instead of just being focused on storefront API, you can actually use Kappa AI's widget. I don't know if it's called Kappa or Kappa. The great thing about this is it's like a GPT thing that's trained on Shopify.dev's docs. And this is something that I've been using almost every single day for a few months now, I think. Because it's just like the moment I'm stuck on, hey, how do I update a meta field? Just like ask it. And it's going to be like, hey, here is a query example, and here is the link to that documentation. So, it's like quick stuff. You can get there a bajillion times quicker, and then you can read the docs and build it yourself. So yeah, for me, it's going to be Kappa AI's widget.
Awesome. I can't wait to check that out. I actually did ask it one question already, and it didn't have an answer for it, so I just need to refine my question, I guess. But what kind of question do you typically ask? Like query, API kind of stuff? Clarification
So
on
for
that?
me, the quick template is how do I, and then, update meta fields without XYZ using GraphQL admin API. So be as specific as I can, and then be like, okay, how do I do this? So you have better results that way.
I asked it how to use the Shopify API in order to live forever, and it didn't have an answer. So apparently, I'll just need more specific. Maybe constrain it more to Shopify, and I'll be good. Cool. We'll check that one out. All right, my pick is something I ran into. I was getting an issue together. It's called Run.js, which is a JavaScript playground for your desktop, which lets you run code in a REPL and get instant feedback, which sounds very similar to the browser console, but according to the website, and I haven't played with it too much yet, I just ran into it, there's some benefits including access to Node.js and browser APIs, full downloadable access, and a whole bunch of other stuff that you can pay for if you want sort of the support of kind of like an IDE sort of environment for messing around with JavaScript on your desktop. So JavaScript's not my native tongue. I'm more a Rubyist, so any tool that I have where I can kind of poke around at ideas and see what happens is always a boon for me. So that's my pick.
Nice. This is pretty cool.
Awesome.
And it's not even that expensive. It's only like $26.
I mean, if you actually paid what you're supposed to pay for ngrok, you could take that other $26 that you'd be saving and pay it on Run.js instead. I don't know how
Yeah,
you pay
I need
$50
you to-
a month for ngrok.
Yeah,
I
but
don't-
I
I don't.
actually I opened up ngrok's website and
not
I
even
was
a
just like, I
pricing plan
can't
for
find the
$50.
$50 plan.
Listen,
by the way-
listen, guys. I don't know, man. I got railroaded.
Who handles
That's
your
what
finances?
happened, probably. They saw this
Hey,
big
no.
old sucker come in a mile away, and they're like, "This guy's a front end dev. Let's see what we can get away with charging it."
They did.
Taylor, you know what? Let me save you a bunch of money. If you're using my boilerplate, so you can just pull it out. In the developer folder, I have this thing called Update Dashboard that reads the ngrok URLs from your env and updates it to your Shopify partner dashboard. So that's one.
Gosh,
so you
dang
can just
it,
run
man.
npm
Should've
run
had you on
update
months
URL.
ago. I'm $200 in the hole with ngrok right now, and I could have just used Harshdeep's repo. So there you go, folks. Biggest reason to take a look at that.
So that's one. I mean, it also does come with snippets. So it's like, I highly recommend you check out the snippets in that section. The other thing is, if you read ngrok's documentation, you would know that you can actually open up multiple ports by just adding a simple configuration file.
Yeah, Taylor.
Yeah.
RTFM.
Yeah. How dare you accuse me or recommend to me that I read the docs? That's just rude, man.
I mean, if you would have paid me
Could've
that
saved myself
$200, I would have just built it for you.
That's right.
That's oh gosh dang it. That probably would have been the shorter trip there. So sometimes I tell people that all the time, whether it's freelancing or whatever. It's sometimes you just gotta pay and make the mistake, because then I will always remember, because I actually have a dollar value on it. So
That's right.
Yeah, do a thing. The next time you want to do this, like, transfer me the money, I'll, like, understand it for you.
yeah, just send it to you.
That's
I'm
right.
like,
There
hey,
you go.
I just need you to set this
I'll
up,
send
man.
you somebody.
All right, well, that's a good place. I need to wrap it up. We're gonna send Harshdeep money to understand things for us. So, thanks so
For
much
me,
for jumping
anyways.
on with us. It's just like a
Always.
fire hose of awesome insight. Hopefully, we'll get some more of that from you sometime. And in the meantime, we'll post links if people are interested in your course, learning more about some of the things we mentioned on the show, of course. And for those of you that are still with us, have a good night's sleep. We hope you made it all this time and enjoyed yourself. And thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Harshdeep.
Bye.